So the first lesson in this unit is just about understanding some of the key terms and how population ties in to various other things in Unit 2, most specifically resources. Now, it's very important that you know about this chap here, Thomas Malthus, and his key theory is shown by this graph here. He was saying that at some point population is going to outgrow our ability to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves, to give ourselves shelter. Okay, so as you can see from the graph, population is going to get higher than our ability to create resources for ourselves. And that exact point where that happens, he called simply a point of crisis. Now, some might argue that we are already at that point of crisis or have gone beyond that point of crisis. Others would argue that we haven't. It's all a matter of perspective. So if you're living your comfortable life here in the UK, you'll say, well, no, population may be at 7 billion, but we still have food, we still have shelter, we still have clean water. But if you were someone of your age in an extremely poor LEDC in Africa, would you be able to say the same thing? So we can't completely disprove Malthus's theory of the point of crisis. It's important that we look at it with a matter of perspective and context. Now, in terms of resources, population and resources are completely linked with each other. If you just think, for instance, the resources that you've used today, you've turned on a tap, you've been on the tram, you've been on the bus. What resources are these using? Tram is using electricity, the bus is using oil. Okay, these all come from raw materials and resources that we get from under the ground, which we have to dig up, we have to burn, which will then pollute. But it's not just that. Think about your phone, the metals in your phone, zinc, iron, steel that's used to make the cars that you drive around in. Okay? Resources aren't just about what we can burn or dig out from the ground though, it's what we eat. Every time you have a meal, you are using resources. All of those, the cornflakes that you have in the morning are grown from corn in a field, in a farm. Okay, so it's very important to remember the very close relationship between population and resources, because the more of us there are, the more resources we are going to use. And the key thing to realize is that those resources, a lot of those resources anyway, are going to run out one day. So back to population. As I mentioned, 7 billion is the number of people in the world at the moment. It's actually just over 7 billion. It was in October 2011 that we officially hit 7 billion mark with this baby here, Danica May Camacho, born in the Philippines. Purely symbolic. That date and that time was chosen by the United Nations just to raise global awareness of the population problem. Now, very important key term, population explosion. You need to be able to explain what this means. And if you look back at your folder at the graph we constructed showing global population growth since 1500. If you remember, in your description of it and your analysis of it, we noticed that between 1500 and 1900 or 1850, there was a very slight rise in world population. Okay, it took nearly 300 years for it to double from 500 million to a billion. Another 100 years or so for it to double again to 2 billion. But then once we hit to 1927, 1930, all of a sudden global population started increasing very, very quickly and very, very rapidly. Okay, so population explosion is that rapid increase in world population. Look back over your graph, look back over your analysis that you wrote, and remember the key points from that, because you may need to use those again in the exam. Okay, if it's an extended question, as you can see here on the slide, remember point, evidence, explanation. So that's lesson 1 of the population unit. A sample question that you might get might look something like this. Remember, even though it's only 3 marks, you still need to break it down. You still need to look at the command words. You still need to look at the geographical words. Okay? This is asking you to explain. It's not asking you to describe. Explain. You need to give reasons. Explain why global population rates are growing so quickly. Okay? For things like that, we need to talk about death rates. We need to talk about birth rates, healthcare, all those sort of things that we'll go over in the next video.